All right, our next story comes from Dark Reading, and the title here is 4 Low-Cost Ways to Defend Your Organization Against Deepfakes.
Now, let me just say up front, this is some vendor spam a little bit, but we can talk about some of their ideas.
Yes, this will really, I think there's one good idea in here of the 4. So obviously, deepfake-enabled social engineering attacks is becoming very pervasive. I was actually, I in my spare time, one of the things I like doing is I like to watch videos about woodworking, and so there's one of the creators, Black Hills, I think is it's also the name of a security company, coincidentally, but they were recently mimicked by a scammer who convinced a victim, that it was, this creator. Obviously, they had lots of video of the creator from their YouTube videos, offering to sell a table, but this table was like $15,000. So, and I, it was a complete scam. And anyway, like that's completely outside the corporate world, and what we're starting to see there. We don't have the article, here to talk about this time, but there's the um, recent story about a publicly listed minerals company who was just scammed out of $500,000. There's a lot of money, especially when you talk about using this technique to go after, to enable kind of that business email compromise attack, to steal like payroll or vendor payments and whatnot. Like, there's a lot of money here, and so I think we should
Yeah.
expect that we're going to see a significant uptick in this as that technology becomes much more commonly available to adversaries and easier to use. So, so
And
anyway,
likely
but
likely a lot more sophisticated than just simply some sort of business email compromise. Like once I've
yes,
got good solid deep fake technology to impersonate an executive, it might be a lot more interesting. It might get a lot more complicated than just, hey, I need you to transfer money to this offshore bank account for this secret deal I've going, which is what we often see. It could be a very long con potentially, depending on how clever and interested and complex the scam may become.
it's a good point. Good point. There is an opportunity there for kind of that long tail persistent attack. Um, so yeah, I think you're right there. So, the first recommendation is to not overlook the power of well-considered processes, and I think this is really the key one. I think the rest of them are kind of, I'll call it bunk, but I I really think that as a response to this increasing threat, we really have to make sure that we've identified where those kind of weak points are. Like, what, from an adversary perspective, what things would they go after? And then you've got to figure out how to bolster those processes so that they have the right kind of, mutual authentication in the context of, like a phone call or a video call, so that your employees have some hope in hell of not falling victim to this, as a matter of process, and not relying on, like, them recognizing that, oh, Jerry said a word that I've never heard him say before. Maybe that's actually, maybe this is not really Jerry. So that's, I really think that's where we have to head.
Yeah, I agree, and it's going to be difficult. Uh, but we've talked about this a few times in previous shows. But if you have a well honed process, let's say it's for sending, screwing up my mic, sending money to a new contact that needs certain MFA enabled, cannot be easily spoofed process steps. And you've all agreed to that. It doesn't matter then if the CEO is getting on a Zoom call with you and yelling at you. If you've got to have the ability to say, "I'm sorry, boss, I understand, but we all agreed we have to follow the process. So please follow the process, and I'll be happy to do that." But that can be tough to do when you're getting yelled at by what you think to be as your boss.
Yeah, well, in the spirit of most social engineering attacks, there's there's the aspect of urgency injected, and
Mm-hmm.
so if it is, two or three somebody that's two or three levels above you in your company, yelling at you, sure, you're probably not all that familiar with them, and
Right.
B, you're probably afraid of losing your job.
So not just urgency, but level of authority, an authority figure, which is another
Right.
common um, social engineering tactic that we see.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
So, but
so I,
not to overstate that one, but I agree with you. I think that that particular control is your best defense against most types of social engineering that are trying to do some sort of business email compromise or change. Another one I've seen a lot, I've personally seen this one. A bad actor got access to somebody's email system and was sending an email as an internal employee trying to change bank information for good, valid invoices.
Mhm.
So the invoice was valid, the bill was valid, the business relationship was valid. What they were trying to change was the banking information of where to send the money to pay that invoice.
Right.
So a lot of it looks very legit, except for that one, that one change. And if it looks like it's coming from a legitimate person, that's an interesting problem, right? To have a process to build around. So for high level changes like that are very sensitive, I think it behooves our listeners in these organizations to try to figure out how can I build a social engineering resistant process that again is not too slow, not too unwieldy, doesn't slow the business down too much, but would cause a bad actor to run into a roadblock they couldn't overcome, or at least raise enough suspicion uh, that this likely wouldn't happen or couldn't go through.
Yep. I'll add to that it's not all the problem space isn't all inside your own four walls. We have seen repeated instances where you as a organization have suppliers, and you've accrued expenses that you owe your money to your suppliers for, and sometimes those suppliers themselves are the ones that get hacked, and so it's their email system that's been hacked, and unbeknownst to your supplier, someone using that supplier's email system, either directly or through some sort of some sort of spoofing, is attempting to change where your company is paying that bill. And this, by the way, has happened, fairly frequent now. But certainly, I think this is going to add another dimension, because if, like, it's, the accounts receivable person from your supplier wanting to get on a Zoom call with you to talk about some changes to, where to send your payments. Like, this is tough. This is going to be
Yeah.
tough.
In
Us.
that case, maybe you have a known good phone number that you can call or something. I don't know. I mean,
Yes.
each of these is very situational, but some process that people just that is well designed, that is well thought out, that is well documented, that feels maybe weird to the people who are trying to follow the process, but disrupts these sorts of attack types.
Right. Right. And by the way, there's a lot of money at stake here, so the adversaries will probably adapt, or at least attempt to adapt to
Sure.
what we are doing to mitigate the issue. So the
Well,
other oh, go ahead.
you know why
Sorry.
bad actors try to steal money from businesses, right?
Because that's where the money is.
Correct. Thank you for ruining my punchline.
I knew where you were going with that. All right. So the other recommendations are to sharpen your training and testing initiatives to reflect the latest real world threats, including deepfakes. So, I was thinking I was thinking about, as the CISO of a company, like I could create a deepfake of myself and use that use that as part of my phishing training, and
You
how
could.
ridiculous that would be. Um, I
I think
look, I don't know how effective that would be.
no.
I just
I well, and here, and we were just talking about this. I think in the last show about, or recent show about phishing training and social engineering training, and how there's this mindset with security folks of arrogance and superiority and gleefulness of tricking their employees. I
right.
don't know that I would recommend that in this case either. What I well, I know I wouldn't recommend it. What I may want to do, which I think would be effective, is the first time I introduce this concept, say, all right, finance team, I want to make you aware of the state of the art of social engineering techniques. I'm going to show you a deepfake video that is very good. I'm not trying to trick you. Like I'm educating you on this. I want to show you the capabilities of why we want to do this, and not just try to then say, oh, by the way, the last 30 minutes you thought you were hearing from the CEO, you weren't. That was a deepfake. Aha, I got you. Like I don't think that primes people to learn. That just embarrasses them, and it makes them wonder, right? Why? How did I get fooled? And what's wrong with me? And or anger or pride. I think it's the wrong approach. But so many people in this industry want to take that approach. Let me just trick them and show them how dumb they are. Like, no, show them how good the bad guys are by teaching them. Like, have empathy for them. They're the victims here. So we live and breathe this stuff all day long. If you're listening to this show, you probably live and breathe this stuff all day long. And we forget things that we take for granted that we intuitively know, that is core to our cognitive function, is nowhere near normal baseline for most people. We are weird, right? We look at things very differently than most people. So what we take for granted as table stakes knowledge is not common in people outside of our industry. And we forget that all the time.
Yeah. And by the way, even if they have it, it's not the thing that motivates them.
Right.
Their mission is something else. It's processing payroll or mailing out invoices or whatever.
So I do think from an education standpoint, showing people what is possible is helpful.
Hmm.
Tricking them is not.
I agree. Agree. So next one is analyze and identify your
One,
organization's unique. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
sorry, I just
Hmm.
argued with myself in my own brain. The only way, the only reason I would change this is if I approach this from like a purple teaming, red teaming approach. I teach them, I show them, I have a very strict process, and then I think it may make sense in a high stakes environment to test if that process is followed.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But not, but more as a test of controls and not as part of like a baseline security. This
Right,
not like a phishing simulation test. More of like
right.
like you said, a red team type test.
Okay. Now, sorry, I will not interrupt for the next 1 minute.
We'll see how that works. So anyway, the next one was to analyze and identify your organization's unique risk factors. I do think this one makes good sense because again, you can't think about every single interaction you have with, or every person in your company has as a potential deepfake scenario. Like you've got to identify where those key processes, key points of vulnerability are, and focus on enhancing the controls around those. So I would say this one should be like number 0 on the list, at least in terms of priority. And then finally, cultivate a culture that errs on the side of caution, which, don't click on any links, don't open any attachments, don't join any WebExes. If you're not sure, you should call your CISO and ask them if to join your WebEx and see if have your CISO tell if that's really the CEO or.
I think
By
you
the
should
way,
just not get out of bed.
exactly. I Not in the context of this, but one of the things that bothered me or kind of drove me a little bit crazy. On the one hand, it was good because like people gave a damn, but on the other hand, like it made me again. It made me crazy. Was people sending me emails as a CISO asking me, "Is this real or is this phishing?" And
Yeah.
and they were not emails of consequence. So like there were in particular there were some very specific executives who like had to adjudicate every email they got. Like, is this phishing or is it legitimate? Like, if you're gonna delete it anyway, just freaking delete it.
Right.
I mean, I get the point. I'm happy that you're thinking along those lines, but you know, if it's not something that's material to you, or you think it's obviously if it's something that looks like it's targeting you, that's perhaps a different discussion. But that wasn't that wasn't what was happening. So, um, look, I think we can overdo it here. Again, we have a business to run, and I think we have to find ways of developing and implementing and operating controls that allow people to do their jobs. The joke in the industry is like you give people a clicking box, and then you tell them don't click on the links using the link clicking box, and it's ridiculous. Like it's so I really think we've got to look inward and figure out how we do a better job of constructing more robust controls that don't rely on people, not kind of slowing down their job, because they have objectives. They have to meet performance goals and whatnot. And anyway, I'm beating a dead horse now.
2 words: AI fixes everything.
I was thinking about that. Because we've talked about this problem a couple of times. I have probably no fewer than 10 messages sitting in my LinkedIn DMs from different companies who have listened to us talk about this problem in the past, telling me that they want to come and demo their solution to the
Hmm.
deepfake problem. So I don't know what they're doing. They make me tired. Like
Well,
I just feel dirty when I go to LinkedIn. Sorry, I'm sorry. The
that's not
little
why you feel
diversion.
dirty. That's not why you feel dirty. Don't lie to me.
You're probably right.
There is something to be said for potential deep fake detection technology, but it's such a moving target. Um,
I'm skeptical. I'm
yeah,
just very skeptical.
and I still think the first item on this list is still the more robust, reliable solution, because it catches no matter what type of social engineering is going on, which is the firm, well designed, smart process.
Yeah, I was thinking, and it's a silly thought, but I'm going to say it
Aren't
anyway because I'm a
aren't
silly
they all?
guy. What we really need is a way to authenticate us as people in the context of like a call. So,
Maybe if like the government had like a central database of authenticators that we could all.
no, I'm thinking more like something that's tied to your company's directory, and so like you know, two people that are talking on the phone can click a button and you on your phones, and you can kind of mutually authenticate that way. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the right solution is. I haven't put a whole lot of thought into it, but it seems like perhaps there's something there.
I don't even know if you're actually Jerry.
I
We're doing this remotely. You could be
I
just
don't
a
even know if I'm Jerry. So
you know,
let's
you
be
could be
honest.
replaced. You could have been replaced last night in your sleep. How would you know?
That's true. Was it Buddhists say that you know, you are a different person every time you wake up.
It's like the problem with transporters in Star Trek.
Good point.
If somebody is completely recreated with all their memories and all of their, intact, they think they're that person, but they're actually a duplicate. Like, who's the real? I'm just telling you. When you went to sleep last night, you could have woken up. You could be a pod person.
Now I'm going to be very anxious now. Maybe we'll move
Now,
on.
now you're going to be anxious. That's what made
So
you anxious.
how about we move on?